Hello, American literature students. Professor Berninger here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Ben Franklin's The Way to Wealth. One of my absolute favorite essays. Benjamin Franklin is my favorite founding father. And if you follow the advice in The Way to Wealth, you'll do fine in life. You will do very, very well here in the United States of America. And, you know, it, he talks a lot about spending less, doing more. It's basically an essay about personal responsibility. And that's very important, I think, to being a successful person, no matter what success means to you, right? A lot of money, that might be what that means to you. Helping others, whatever success means to you, I think personal responsibility has a lot to do with that. And Ben Franklin, in this essay, there again, like with Washington Irving, there are a couple layers of authorship here. Um, we have Richard Saunders, we have the Farmer's Almanac. Really, it's just Ben Franklin hiding behind a couple of different fake names, which was very common at the time. He actually does a double job of it. So he comes across an auction. Now that's not good. That means someone lost their house, lost their belongings. They owe money. So an auctioneer came in to sell someone's possessions, right? We think of an auction today as you go to an auction house and you buy antiques or whatever, and it's people trying to get rid of stuff, you finding stuff. But this is someone's household goods being auctioned off because they're probably headed to the poorhouse. And they ask Father Abraham, the assembled crowd, "Oh, do you have any advice for us?" And he gives this great advice. And at the end of the essay, they just go back to buying stuff at the auction that obviously they don't need. Now, so I want to go through some of the highlights here of The Way to Wealth. And we have no better example than Rip Van Winkle to apply some of these concepts to. So Rip Van Winkle, written 60 years after this, but Washington Irving certainly would have been familiar with Ben Franklin's work. So Franklin starts off with time and avoiding sloth. And he wants us, but dost thou love life, then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. Now that's very important. You're born with time, right? That's about all you really have is time. And how you choose to spend that time is how you're spending your limited time here on earth. And one of the most important points, and this is going to come up with Henry David Thoreau later in the semester, every time you spend money, you're selling some of yourself. All work is prostitution. When you are at your job, you are not able to be you. You have to be whoever your job wants you to be. You are not free at your job. You are selling yourself, your time to someone else so that you can buy food, have a roof over your head, some clothing, warmth in the wintertime. But when you buy stuff you don't need, which is a lot of stuff that we buy that we don't really need, guess what? You have to go and sell more of yourself to someone else, right? Every time you go to work, you are selling yourself to someone else. Every time you buy something that you don't need, you have to sell more of yourself. So price tags in the store should not be in dollars. It should be how many hours you have to whore yourself out to someone else. It's also a good reason to find work that you like. So sloth makes all things difficult, but industry all easy. Excellent. Thank you, Ben Franklin. So basically, work hard. And maybe the most classic Ben Franklin line ever, and there are many, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. So that's a really, really good one. Now, applying this to our friend Rip Van Winkle, it's more what he spends his time on, right? It's more what he spends his time on. He doesn't spend it all that wisely, does he? He helps others, which is nice. Maybe that's what he considers himself a success. Maybe that's what a success would be to him. But it's not really working for his farm. It's not working for his wallet. I don't know how that family lives. Now, here's another part of time. A life of leisure, this is right from the Franklin essay. A life of leisure and a life of laziness are two things. Now, that's good stuff. So when you're not at work, and you're not working around your house to keep your life functioning, you have spare time. And and Franklin is saying leisure, that spare time can still be productive. Exercising for your health, reading a book you enjoy, listening to music that's enlightening to you, or you can waste it, right? Now, Rip Van Winkle, with his spare time, he hunts and fishes. That's pretty good because you can eat what you shoot and you can eat what you pull out of the creek. So I'm pretty good with Rip Van Winkle, not so much on his industry, and he is full of some sloth, but his leisure time, he does do well with that. He does do well with that. Okay, I love this part. A little neglect may breed great mischief. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost, being overtaken and slain by the enemy. Yes, yes, and yes. One neglect leads to another neglect, leads to another neglect, leads to another neglect. Something people often neglect, changing the oil in their car or having it changed if you don't want to do it yourself. So your car doesn't last as long. It's probably not going to blow up, but the engine's not going to last as long. So then you have to buy a new car. And then guess what? Because that car that you spent money on didn't last as long, guess what you have to do? Yeah, that's right. Sell yourself to someone else because you did not take care of your car. Cars are, if you own a home, cars are the second most expensive thing you usually buy. If you don't own your own home, it's probably the most expensive thing you have. And most people neglect basic maintenance on their cars. So that's a great example. Even though Franklin never knew about cars, obviously, that is a good one. One little neglect here, neglect there. There's a hole in the roof. We'll let that go. Next thing you know, the roof underneath is rotting, and then mold gets in, and then your whole house goes to heck. So that's really, really important. Then he gets into frugality. And again, this idea of these little things that add up. A small leak will sink a great ship. So wasting a little money here, wasting a little money there, you'll just waste more and more, and it adds up. Like the classic, thing that the classic example is what? People who buy coffee, right? You stop at Dunkin' Donuts every day and you pay, I don't know, $3 for a cup of coffee when you can make it home for 75 cents. I don't know. Check my numbers. Over time, that's a lot of money, right? Over time, that is a lot of money. Streaming services. Well, we got rid of cable, right? So that saved us like $75 at least. We got rid of cable TV, and now we're going to stream. Next thing you know, I've got Netflix for $10 a month. I've got Amazon Prime for $19 a month. I've got HBO Max for $9.95 a month. And all these cheap services are we're getting close to spending a lot of money again, right? So a small leak will sink a great ship. A little here, a little there adds up to a lot. And if you don't spend it, you can save it, put it in the bank, and it'll grow a little bit. So thank you, Ben Franklin. Thank you, sir. Buy what thou hast no need of, and ere long thou shalt sell thy necessaries. Let's lay that one down again. Buy what thou hast no need of, and before long thou shalt sell thy necessaries. So one thing that Americans, in my view, are really bad at is understanding the difference between needs and wants. Needs, housing, food, clothing, maybe transportation. Wants, much more clothing than you need, a much bigger house than you need, a much fancier car than you need, and then also lots of other things, video games, streaming services, a television, right? I don't need a television. There are lots of things that we don't need, and a lot of people will tell you that you will tell yourself, right? No one's going to tell you. You're going to tell yourself, oh, I need that. You don't. If you're telling yourself you need it, you're probably convincing yourself that you need it. Classic example, one time in my class, I said to my students, who's got a pickup truck? Who's got a big pickup truck here? And a guy raised his hand. I said, do you need that truck? And he said, yeah, I'm a part-time contractor, so I need a truck. Legit. A young woman raised her hand. I said, do you need your truck? She said, yes, I need my truck. It's how I move my four-wheeler around. I couldn't say anything. Now that's a good example, right? A four-wheeler you definitely don't need. And she didn't say that she needed it for work, and I suspect she didn't. And therefore, the truck you don't need. So both of those things were wants, right? Both of those things were wants. And Franklin says, buy what thou hast no need of, and thou shalt sell thy necessaries. Buy what you don't need, and pretty soon you'll be selling off what you do need. He that goes a borrowing goes a sorrowing. Folks, avoid debt if at all possible. For a house, you have to go into debt usually, but the house has value and it's going up in value. Education, that usually pays off in the long run if you take out a loan for school, but try not to take out a loan for anything else. Cars are tough, I know, but hey, oftentimes people have a car they owe more money on than the thing is worth. That's really bad. And putting stuff on your credit card that you don't need, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Yeah, a lot of people have negative worth. You add up all of your assets and you look at how much you owe, and a lot of people have negative worth. And if you have negative worth, you need to only focus on your needs. And that's good anyway. So when we talk about Thoreau, all this stuff you buy that you don't want, that you want but don't need, just clutters up your life. Anyway, moving on. I could talk about this stuff all day. I like Franklin here. He gets into these people like to blame taxes for why they have no money. And you hear that all the time. And Franklin is saying, okay, personal responsibility, people. Are you taxing yourself? Are you wasting money on things? People always want to blame someone else for their problems, but people are often messing that up. So anyway, Rip Van Winkle, as applied, as looked at through the eyes of Ben Franklin, he's kind of lazy. He does not take care of his house very well, or his farm, and those little things lead to big things, right? We don't know if he has a lot of things that he doesn't, if he buys things that he doesn't need, or if he has debt, but all of his other habits might, in fact, lead to that. I do say he does use his leisure time wisely with hunting and fishing, and I think spending time with the dog is a pretty solid use of time. So a couple of you did a really nice job on the discussion board. You got into the Protestant work ethic. That's kind of a catch-all term for the American work ethic, which is, early to bed, early to rise, and work hard and be frugal. We don't live by that as much as we used to, but advertisers, everybody else wants our money, and they've always got their hands in our pockets. So the way to wealth sort of applied to Rip Van Winkle, but let me tell you, you could read this thing every month of your life and be reminded of a way to build your success, whatever that success is. And if you are bad with money, if you spend more than you earn, if you waste money, you're not going to be successful at much of anything, because you're going to be spending all your time trying to figure out how to pay off your debt and trying to figure out how to live. The less money you spend, the more time you have to make your own choices in life.